We hear so much about immigration these days, right? Border crises, political debates, economic impacts. It's easy to get caught up in the
There
headlines.
really is, yeah.
But what about the actual people living these stories? The ones putting down roots in new communities?
hmm
We're diving into that reality today, getting past the headlines and exploring what U.S. migration really looks like, both now and historically.
I think it's fascinating, how quickly narratives around immigration can take root, right? Especially when they're fueled by, well, let's just say not always the most accurate information.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's like those narratives, they really shape public opinion, whether they're true or not. Just look at what's been happening in Springfield, Ohio recently.
Spring-
Yeah, Springfield. This influx of Haitian migrants there, it's gotten everyone riled up. Some politicians even saying, get this, that they're eating people's pets.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I heard about that. Completely unfounded, of course.
Totally baseless.
Yeah.
But that's the point, right? Things get blown out of proportion and suddenly everyone's afraid.
And it makes it that much harder to focus on the facts. Like, for instance, a lot of these Haitian migrants in Springfield, actually in the U.S. legally.
Legally.
Yeah, through something called temporary protected status, or TPS.
DPS, right. For those of us who don't have the immigration dictionary memorized.
Basically, it's a program that grants legal residency to folks fleeing countries facing some pretty dire situations, like natural disasters, political turmoil, that kind of thing.
Ah, okay. So, like, after the earthquake in Haiti back in 2010,
Exactly. Tons of Haitians were granted TPS then, which let them live and work in the U.S. legally. And it's not like they were just, randomly assigned to Springfield.
right. So what's the connection? Why Springfield?
Well, a lot of it comes down to existing communities. There was already a Haitian community in Springfield, so naturally it became a draw for newcomers. Familiarity, support systems, that's huge when you're starting over in a whole new country.
Makes sense. It's hard enough navigating a new place, let alone a new language and culture on top of everything else. But, I mean, I imagine this sudden influx of new folks hasn't been easy for everyone in Springfield, has it?
It definitely seems like there's been some, shall we say, friction, which honestly is pretty common when you have these kind of rapid demographic shifts. It's important to look at both the good and, well, the not so good that can come with it.
For sure. For sure. I mean, on one hand, you've got residents welcoming the Haitian community with open arms, right?
Mhm.
Praising their work ethic, seeing them as a solution to labor shortages. But then you've got those anecdotes popping up, like, the school bus driver complaining about some of the newcomers not quite getting the hang of traffic laws yet. Or that resident at the town hall demanding they put up a no vacancy sign for the whole city.
It really highlights how everyone's having to adjust, right?
Yeah.
Newcomers trying to find their footing, longtime residents trying to adapt to new neighbors, new ways of life.
It's like Springfield's become this like microcosm of the whole immigration debate happening across the U.S.
Yeah.
This mix of hope and anxiety and everyone trying to figure out how to make it work.
And it's interesting, these anxieties we're seeing in Springfield, they're not exactly new, you know what I mean? It's like every time the US sees a wave of immigration, there's this push and pull, open arms, slam doors, the whole shebang.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like that whole yellow peril thing back in the day with
hmm
Chinese immigrants. Talk about fear-mongering.
Right. Wild, isn't it? How some of that old rhetoric, it's like it's coming back around just with a different target.
It's kind of creepy when you think about it. History rhyming and all that.
Totally. And it's important to remember, like, the yellow peril thing, it wasn't just prejudice. It was very strategic. Used to justify some pretty discriminatory policies.
Like the Chinese Exclusion Act.
Exactly. 1882, if I'm not mistaken, the first major law in the U.S. that straight up restricted immigration based on, well, basically race and nothing else.
Which kind of brings us to the whole evolution of U.S. immigration laws. I mean, talk about a roller coaster. Attitudes changing, the economy doing its thing, and let's be real, sometimes just plain old racism rearing its ugly head.
It's true. For decades, it was all about those quotas, right? Favoring European immigrants. If you weren't from the right part of Europe, good luck getting in.
Talk about a closed door. It wasn't until, what, the 60s that things started to really shift.
Yeah, 1965, the Hart-Celler Act. Huge turning point. That's when they finally dismantled those discriminatory quotas.
About time.
Right. And it's fascinating because with Hart-Celler, the focus shifted to family reunification. That became like the key factor in immigration decisions. And it explains a lot about why we see these concentrations of certain immigrant groups like the Haitians in Springfield choosing specific places to settle.
Right. Yeah, they're drawn to what's familiar. The support system of family, shared culture, all of that. Makes you think, about your own family story. How'd you people end up in the U.S.?
Right. Was it similar? Seeking a better life? Joining up with existing communities? It's a question we should all be asking ourselves, honestly, especially now with all the complexity surrounding immigration these days.
Absolutely. Because you strip away the politics, the rhetoric, all that noise, and you're left with these human stories, right?
Mhm.
Stories of resilience, of hope, of just people trying to make a go of it.
Exactly. And that's the thing, right? It's about the human experience at the end of the day.
Which brings us to, I guess, the heart of it all, the economic and social impacts of immigration. Man, that's a topic that can really get people fired up on both sides.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you've got folks like the mayor of Oklahoma City, David Holt, right? He's a big proponent of immigration, talks about how immigrants contribute to the economy, they fill those essential jobs, they revitalize communities.
Yeah, they bring that entrepreneurial spirit, for sure. You see it everywhere. But then there's the other side of the coin, right? The folks who worry about the strain on resources, the pressure on schools, housing, the fear that the culture they know is, like, disappearing.
And, we have to acknowledge those anxieties. It's real. Rapid change, even when it's ultimately a good thing, it's still hard. It's about recognizing that and figuring out how to navigate it together.
So where do we go from here?
Hmm.
How do we cut through all the noise, the fear, the blame game, and actually create an approach to immigration that, works for everyone?
It's the million-dollar question, right? I think it starts with changing how we think about the whole thing.
Hmm.
We have to move past this idea that it's a zero-sum game. Like if one group wins, another one automatically loses.
Zero-sum game. I'm not sure everyone got that memo.
Basically, it's this idea that there's only so much to go around, limited resources, you know the drill. But immigration, it's not like that. It's not about slicing up a pie and hoping you get a bigger piece than the next guy. It's about recognizing that everyone who comes in, they can actually make the pie bigger for everyone.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. It's about focusing on the shared benefits, right? The potential for everyone to do better, not just one group at the expense of another. But how do we actually make that happen? What can communities do?
Oh, tons of things. We need to invest in programs that really support integration. Language classes, job training, cultural exchange programs, the whole 9 yards. Create spaces where newcomers and longtime residents can actually, connect with each other, build relationships instead of walls.
Yeah, there's that saying, right? Fear is just the absence of familiarity. The more we interact with people from different backgrounds, the less scary they seem.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be some big formal thing either, just everyday interactions. Imagine, that newcomer in Springfield trying to figure out the traffic rules, and instead of getting honked at, someone lends a hand. Those little acts of kindness, they add
It's
up.
a two-way street, though, right?
Yeah.
Newcomers, they have to meet people halfway.
Absolutely. Integration has got to go both ways. Respect the existing culture, obviously, but share your own, too. Be open to new things, but don't lose sight of what makes you, you. Your values, your heritage, all of it.
It's that whole beautiful tapestry thing, right? All these different threads woven together, that's what makes America what it is. And immigrants, they've always been a huge part of that.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, I think it's safe to say we've done a deep dive on immigration today, haven't we? And if there's one thing we've learned, it's that there are no easy answers. This stuff is complicated. But if we can just embrace that complexity, challenge our own biases a little, really listen to the stories behind the headlines, I think we can start to move past the fear-mongering and build something better.
A future where immigration is seen as a strength, not a weakness. Something that makes us more resilient, more dynamic.
Exactly. And for you listening out there, here's something to think about. What can you do in your own community to bridge those divides we've been talking about, to make your little corner of the world a bit more welcoming, a bit more understanding? It's worth thinking about. And on that note, we'll leave you to it. Keep asking those tough questions, keep digging for those answers, and we'll catch you next time for another deep dive.